Nations has been unable to keep the peace. In June 1985, representatives of the world's nations gathered once again in San Francisco to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the United Nations. Delegates reviewed 40 years of achievement and considered the future of the World Organization. Mr. Armstrong had reported the 1945 conference for the plain truth. Today, he has met with more heads of state and leaders of government than any other man alive. He was afforded a position of honor during the days of discussion and debate.
If you asked me, what does the United Nations need most? More power or more money or both? My answer would be, the United Nations needs above all the love, the understanding, the interest, and the support of the peoples of all nations.
The hardest thing for human beings to do is to set lofty goals and work hard for them, while recognizing that they may never be fully realized. Yet this is what the United Nations is really all about. The failure of the United Nations to meet all its lofty aims is no cause for despair. We should continue to set high goals that inspire us to work harder and to persevere.
It is said, according to United Nations studies, that we've had 154 conventional wars since 1945, fought on 71 countries, on the ground of 71 countries, with over 20 million people dead. It continues, even at this moment in time, at a measured loss of life of 1,000 people a day, 30,000 a month, ad infinitum. What would we do without the United Nations Forum on Arms Control and Disarmament? It is entirely possible that without it, the doomsday clock would already have struck midnight. Perhaps we can meet here again in San Francisco, 40 years from now, in the year 2025. And in the interim, because of the tireless work which is done, sanity may have intervened. And we will then be at a conference discussing a convention on the control of the proliferation of plowshares and pruning hooks.
As one who has devotedly sat on the sidelines of the Security Council for nearly 40 years, perhaps I may be forgiven for saying that there are moments, or have been moments, and still are, when I feel that only an invasion from outer space is likely to reintroduce to the Security Council that spirit of unanimity and collegiate responsibility which the authors of the Charter were talking about. I sincerely hope I may be proved to be wrong.
UNESCO, the UN has...
Only 3 of the original signers of the United Nations Charter are alive today. They were invited to attend the commemoration conference and speak to the delegates.
We who came together in those early days of the UN know that the most and certainly the best we could do at that time was to build the foundation. We can pride ourselves that the foundation is still intact. But the structure of a genuine peace has yet to be built. This is the continuing challenge for all those who understand that the human race cannot survive in a condition of world anarchy.
It's not enough for the young generation to say we do not want a nuclear war. That's obvious. But if there is to be peacekeeping, there must be peacemaking. And the United Nations needs a tremendous expansion in the way in which solutions are worked out and brought forward.
When we look ahead to the years of peace, we find that distressingly little is being contemplated to be done in this conference in the realm of the mind and spirit. It is to the spirit and mind of man, to his ideas and his attitudes, that we must devote considerable attention if the peace is going to be truly won. Unless we secure the right conditions for spiritual and intellectual health, and unless we determine the right positive ideas for which man should live, I am afraid all our work in this conference may prove to have been in vain. Have this particular...
After his speech, Dr. Malik privately discussed with Mr. Armstrong what he considered to be the missing dimension in the philosophy of the United Nations representatives.
There is an old wisdom in the Middle East with which we are fully acquainted. You know, history began in the Middle East. I mean, the history of the Western world began in the Middle East, in Mesopotamia and Egypt, on the shores of Lebanon, the Phoenicians, then in Jerusalem, and so forth. One of the basic things that you find everybody believes in, everybody without exception, in every village in Lebanon, in every village in Egypt, everywhere. One of the fundamental things which nobody talks about here, because now you have, with all respect for you, now you have outgrown this old wisdom of the Middle East. One of the important things that we talk about is the devil. I'd like to see one man speak of the devil. Now, the devil has penetrated human hearts everywhere. In your heart, sir, and in mine, the devil is contending with Christ all the time. He's contending with him in all sorts of ways. I can reveal them to you at length. So we believe that the devil is at work in the midst of all these events, and while the devil is at work and has not yet been completely conquered, vanquished, we will never have peace. We will never have peace. You think the United Nations is going to bring about peace so long as the devil is around? We had 1,000 people today at lunch, more than 1,000, maybe 1,500. I was sitting down and thinking all the time, Mr. Armstrong, all the time, what is going on in the minds of these people? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure the devil was not there in the minds of these people. I'm not sure at all. Okay. With all their schemes and ideas and emotions and aspirations and plannings and all kinds of things. The devil is at work. So this is a thing that if you ask anybody, any peasant in Lebanon or in Egypt will tell you, of course the devil is at work. Of course the devil is at work. But here, the devil has so much conquered you that you don't talk about him. You wouldn't dare talk about him. I didn't say conquered you. This is the wrong way of putting it. But he's so clever that one way with which he acts is to conceal himself.
Today, few people realize that this is Satan's world. As Satan's rule of this earth draws nearer to the end, it becomes increasingly important for an ambassador of the kingdom of God to reach many nations with the warning of tribulation and the promise of peace. There is a special urgency in reaching the nations of the industrial world, for the prophecies show that it is these nations that will trigger the crisis that catapults the human race into the final trial. Since the end of the Second World War, Europe has known 40 years of peace, one of the longest periods without war in this continent's stormy history. After the destruction of the war, the nations have rebuilt. Behind the scenes, patient, cautious men have been working for future prosperity and the fulfillment of an old dream, a United States of Europe. Because of Europe's critical role in the fulfillment of prophecy, Mr. Armstrong has kept in contact with these architects of a united Europe. Such a man is Dr. Otto von Habsburg, son of the last Austrian emperor and a leading member of the European Parliament.